A one-eyed lawman, a fearless teenage girl, a manhunt across hostile territory. True Grit turned into one of the defining westerns of its era, but the people who brought it to life had stories just as dramatic off-screen. Oscar wins, quiet heartbreaks, and final chapters most fans never got to hear. Let's go through them one by one. Rooster Cogburn, John Wayne, the one-eyed U.S. Marshal at the heart of the film, hard-drinking, short-tempered, and fiercely committed to his own version of justice. John Wayne was born in 1907 in Winterset, Iowa. He was 62 when he stepped into the role in 1969, and he died in 1979 at age 72. Rooster remains one of his most beloved performances precisely because Wayne let him be messy, funny one moment, dangerous the next, unexpectedly tender after that. Wayne had already built decades of Western legend before this: Stagecoach, The Searchers, Rio Bravo, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. But Rooster Cogburn is what finally won him his only competitive Academy Award, closing out his career with the recognition many felt was long overdue. By the time he made True Grit, Wayne had already spent over 3 decades as one of Hollywood's most bankable leading men, and audiences had watched him age on screen from young cavalry officers to grizzled veterans. He'd also survived a serious battle with lung cancer a few years before filming, which makes the sheer physical presence he brings to Rooster even more remarkable. The role let him send up his own tough guy image a little, and that self-aware humor is part of why the performance still holds up today. LaBoeuf, Glen Campbell, the confident Texas Ranger who teams up with Rooster and Mattie in the hunt for Tom Cheney. Glen Campbell was born in 1936 in Delight, Arkansas, and was 33 when he took the role in 1969. He passed away in 2017 at 81. What made LaBoeuf work was Campbell's easy charm and genuine sincerity. He never tried to out-tough Wayne. He just brought his own kind of steadiness. Of course, most people know Campbell first as a musician, rhinestone cowboy, Wichita lineman, gentle on my mind, and his turn in True Grit showed a different, quieter side of that same talent. Casting Campbell was actually a bit of a gamble at the time, since he had almost no acting experience before stepping onto set alongside Wayne. He leaned on his natural charisma rather than technique, and it worked well enough that he continued picking up occasional film and TV roles for years afterward. Later in life, Campbell also became known for speaking openly about his diagnosis with Alzheimer's disease, using his final tour to raise awareness around the condition. Emmett Quincy, Jeremy Slate, one of the outlaws caught up in the film's violent underworld. Jeremy Slate was born in 1926 in Atlantic City, New Jersey, and was 43 when he appeared in the film. He died in 2006 at 80. Slate had a knack for playing men who felt like trouble was always one step away, and Quincy is a compact example of that skill. He spent his career moving comfortably between westerns, dramas, and action films. Before acting, Slate served in the U.S. Navy, and that discipline seemed to carry over into the quiet intensity he brought to his tougher roles. He worked steadily through the 1960s and 70s in film and on television, often cast as men on the wrong side of the law. Even in smaller parts like Quincy, he had a way of making his presence felt without needing much dialogue to do it. Ned Pepper, Robert Duvall, the outlaw leader, and one of the film's central threats. Robert Duvall was born in 1931 in San Diego, California, and was 38 when he played the role. As of 2026, he's 95 years old. Duvall gave Ned Pepper intelligence and a strange kind of humanity, a villain you could almost understand. Duvall went on to become one of the most respected actors of his generation, with roles in The Godfather, Apocalypse Now, Tender Mercies, and Lonesome Dove. A career built on restraint and emotional precision. Long before True Grit, Duvall had trained at New York's HB Studio and built a reputation in stage and television work, honing the understated style that would define his later screen career. He's remained active into his 90s, and his body of work spans literally every decade from the 1960s onward, a rare kind of longevity in the industry. Many critics still consider his performance in Tender Mercies the finest of his career, earning him a Best Actor Oscar. Moon, Dennis Hopper, a wounded, frightened outlaw whose brief screen time still leaves a mark. Dennis Hopper was born in 1936 in Dodge City, Kansas, and was 33 during filming. He died in 2010 at 74. Hopper made Moon feel raw and unstable, a performance built on fear rather than menace. He'd go on to define a very different corner of American film: Easy Rider, Blue Velvet, Apocalypse Now, Hoosiers. carrying that same restless energy through a career defined by risk-taking. Hopper wasn't just an actor, he directed Easy Rider himself, and the film became a defining statement of the counterculture era in American cinema. His career had its share of turbulence, including years where the industry considered him difficult to work with, but he found a powerful late-career resurgence in the 1980s. By the time he passed, he'd become as well known for his photography and art collecting as for his acting. Lawyer Goudy, Alfred Ryder, the composed attorney navigating frontier justice. Alfred Ryder was born in 1916 in New York City and was 53 in 1969. He died in 1995 at 79. Ryder brought a nervous formality to the role, a deliberate contrast to the rougher men surrounding him, drawing on a long career across theater, film, and television. Ryder started out on the Broadway stage in the 1930s, well before television became the dominant medium, and that stage discipline shows in how precisely he handles his few scenes. He became a familiar face on episodic TV throughout the 1950s and 60s, often cast as officials, doctors, and other authority figures. Goudy is a small role, but it's the kind of understated, technically sharp work that defined most of his career. Colonel G. Stonehill, Strother Martin, the exasperated horse trader, who sparks one of the film's funniest exchanges with Mattie. Strother Martin was born in 1919 in Kokomo, Indiana, and was 50 when he filmed his scenes. He died in 1980 at 61. Martin had one of the most recognizable voices in American character acting, and he turned Stonehill's frustration into comic gold. Beyond True Grit, Martin appeared in Cool Hand Luke, The Wild Bunch, and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, a resume of unforgettable supporting turns. Martin had a long working relationship with director John Sturges and later with Sam Peckinpah, appearing in several of the era's defining westerns. He's perhaps most quoted for his "What we've got here is failure to communicate" line from Cool Hand Luke, a phrase that's become part of the broader cultural vocabulary. Despite rarely landing a lead role, he was one of the most in-demand character actors of his generation. Tom Cheney, Jeff Corey, the outlaw whose murder of Mattie's father sets the whole story in motion. Jeff Corey was born in 1914 in Brooklyn, New York, and was 55 during filming. He died in 2002 at 88. Corey played Cheney as cowardly and volatile rather than simply evil, a more unsettling choice than a straightforward villain. Off-screen, Corey became just as well known as an acting teacher, mentoring a generation of future stars. His acting career was actually interrupted for years after he was blacklisted during the McCarthy era, which is part of what pushed him toward teaching in the first place. Students who passed through his classes went on to become some of the biggest names in Hollywood, giving him an outsized influence on the craft well beyond his own screen credits. By the time he made True Grit, he'd already rebuilt a steady career as a working character actor. Captain Boots Finch, Ron Soble, a disciplined frontier officer who adds texture to the film's world. Ron Soble was born in 1932 in Chicago, Illinois, and was 37 during filming. He died in 2002 at 70, leaving behind a career built on tough, physically convincing supporting roles across westerns and action films. Soble spent much of his career working steadily in episodic television, appearing across decades of western and crime series where his sturdy, authoritative presence made him a natural fit for military and law enforcement types. He rarely landed the spotlight, but directors kept bringing him back for exactly that reason. He was reliable, convincing, and never pulled focus from the leads. Boots Finch is a small but fitting example of the kind of steady supporting work he built his career on. Mattie Ross, Kim Darby, the fearless teenager whose demand for justice drives the entire story. Kim Darby was born in 1947 in Los Angeles and was 22 when she took the role. As of 2026, she's 79. Darby gave Mattie stubbornness, intelligence, and real vulnerability, one of the strongest young heroines in Western film history. She went on to appear in The Strawberry Statement and Better Off Dead, among other projects, but Mattie Ross remains her signature role. Darby had already built a solid career in television before True Grit, but the role of Mattie made her a household name almost overnight, even earning her a Golden Globe nomination. Playing a character considerably younger than her real age at the time, she brought a conviction to Mattie that held her own on screen against veterans like John Wayne. Decades later, the role is still what most audiences remember her for, and it remains a touchstone performance in Western cinema. True Grit endures because it was never just a revenge story. It was about courage, unlikely loyalty, and characters carved out of dust and grit. Most of this cast has taken their final bow. But as of 2026, Robert Duvall and Kim Darby are still with us, living links to a genuine classic. If this brought back some memories, subscribe and stick around for more from the golden age of Hollywood.